Hello, everyone. Happy Thursday. So pumped that you guys are here joining us today. As people are rolling in, and before we get started, would love to say hello. So put your names in the chat. Let us know where you're joining us from. Say hello. I'll start. I'm Olivia. Hi, Sammy. I'm Olivia. Today I am in Boston, usually San Francisco, enjoying the weather. Oh, hey, Dan from Toronto. Hey, Sammy from Saudi Arabia. Wow, thanks for joining from Saudi Arabia. Ashley from Winnipeg. Wow, Stacy from Boise. Blair from San Francisco. Toby from Switzerland. My gosh. Zoe from SF. Mike from Indianapolis. What's up, guys? What a crew we have.
Such a global audience.
I know.
So cool.
Lisbon, Cormac, hi. Hello. Awesome. What a crew. Thanks for joining, guys. So to kick things off, I'm Olivia. Nice to meet you guys all. I'm the growth marketer here at Chameleon, and we are so excited to be co-hosting this webinar with our friends from Send with us, and bring you the amazing Allie, who I will introduce you in a sec, to talk about all things around onboarding email strategy, how to build email sequences that actually drive your users to take action in your product. But before I introduce Allie, just a few housekeeping items. This webinar is being recorded, and you will receive a recording after the webinar is over. We are also doing a live Q&A at the end of the webinar. So if you have questions throughout the webinar, feel free to toss them either in the chat or in our Q&A widget on your Zoom, and we'll definitely be answering them towards the end. Awesome. And without further ado, I want to introduce you guys to Allie Bloom. Yay, Allie. So Allie is a SaaS onboarding consultant and conversion copywriter. She's been helping tech businesses talk to customers for the last 8 years, and she's been published on many blogs talking about onboarding, specifically around on Kissmetrics blog, Autopilot, Mixpanel, Crazy Egg, and many more. She also offers a free onboarding, intro to onboarding course for SaaS founders, for product managers and marketers, to really help them optimize their trial messaging. So without further ado, Allie, say hello and take it from here.
Hi, everyone. Thank you all for joining today. I don't know where what the climate's like where you are, but it's 1,000 degrees here in the American Northeast. So hope you're able to enjoy a little bit of AC during our talk. So I'm going to turn off my video really quickly and great, go into the slides. Awesome. Well, thank you all so much for joining. And Olivia, thank you very much for having me here. I'm very excited to talk with everyone today about onboarding emails, something near and dear to my heart. The topic of our conversation today is how to write onboarding emails that are driving both customer success and free to paid conversions. And the reason that we're talking about both of these two different objectives is because you care very much about those free to paid conversions, of course, but to get them, really the cornerstone of what we're talking about when we're talking about growth is really helping customers be successful. And this is something that you can do even if you're not a professional writer. So a lot of what we're going to be talking about is something called conversion copywriting, which is different from many other types of writing that you may be used to. And you don't have to have majored in English, or you don't have to have been training to be a copywriter for eons to know what you're doing here. We're going to talk about ways to do that. And specifically, our agenda for the talk is to start by going over some of the forces that stop people from becoming customers. So when people come to your product, there are many, many things that could prevent them from being successful. We're going to talk about them all. Well, not all of them, but several of them. We're going to talk about the information that you need to design your onboarding sequences, to plot them, to make sure that they have the information that your customers need. And then we're going to talk about how to turn the information that you have into actual conversion optimized messages that help your customers be successful. And then at the very end, we're going to be doing some live email teardowns with some very gracious or generous volunteers who submitted their emails to be publicly eviscerated. Not eviscerated, there's a lot of really great learnings to extract and cool things that the customers are doing, as well as some Q&A at the end. So stick around for that. And as Olivia mentioned, everything will be sent to you afterwards if you do happen to need to pop out. But we hope that you will stay for live email teardowns and Q&A. So this is one of my favorite ways of talking about a SaaS trial. It's a mountain. Your customers, just like people who are hiking a mountain, they come to your business knowing that they weren't born knowing how to use your product. There's going to be at least a little bit of a learning curve. But during the trial, during their first few moments of interacting with you, they're going to get some tiny, small success, and success will pile on success. And by the end of their journey, they will have reached the top and they will be super successful. Maybe they've reached the first of many success milestones. Maybe they have a lot of successive milestones to reach. But this is what they're hoping for. Fortunately, this is what the journey looks like in reality for many people who sign up for a trial. Instead of having nice, happy rainbows and unicorns, there are scary clowns and poisonous mushrooms and scary snakes and all manner of obstacles in their way. Some of these forces happen on the customer's side of the world, and some of them are things that you may be inadvertently doing to prevent your customers from being as successful as possible. I like to categorize these reasons into 3 different areas. And the first are product-centric reasons. So we're going to talk about some examples, but these are the ones that are related to your product specifically. Customer-centric reasons that don't really have too much to do with you. And then my favorite, which are these missed value reasons. So people who just didn't get the value during the trial. So product-centric barriers are when your product is missing a feature. So if you have a tool that does time tracking but not invoicing, and your customer absolutely needs invoicing, this is what we would call a product-related barrier to success. It's not going to matter what you say or do in your onboarding. This is a feature that's missing from your product. If you are showing your customers a buggy experience or an experience full of crashes, or if it takes up a lot of bandwidth or you lose their data, again, these are things that will prevent them from wanting to keep working with you after their trial. Usability issues also fall into this category. If there are things that are just really wonky or really, really tricky for people to figure out how to do, even with instruction, this would be another barrier to their success. And these are really important problems to solve, but they are unlikely to be solved with an onboarding email. It doesn't matter how many emails you send if you're losing your customers' data or if there's a lot of crashes. So these are problems that you'd want to address with your product team. A customer-centric barrier to success might be saying, oh, this isn't really a priority for me right now, or I have a lot of options and I'm pretty overwhelmed. Or an external force weighing on your customer. If their boss wants them to try out a different tool, if their boss doesn't want them to work on this project, there are a lot of different things that can be tricky for a customer to navigate. A lot of internal forces that prevent them from continuing to solve a problem that may be very painful for them. And then these missed value barriers. These are my favorite opportunity for you to help your customers be successful. They are when people report that you don't have a feature and that they really wanted, but you actually do have a feature. So somebody came to your product and just missed out on the value that it offers. Maybe somebody didn't complete the installation. Maybe they completed the installation incorrectly, or maybe they came in once, but they never signed in again. These are all people who started solving their problem, but then the reason that they stopped was because they didn't do something or they didn't see something that your product can do to deliver them value. And these are, again, your biggest opportunities when you are writing onboarding emails is to help people complete the steps that your product can help them complete to be successful. That was a slide out of order there. So how do you find the reasons for why people cancel? Where are these reasons hanging out? Well, chances are your customers have already told you. You can start, if they haven't, if you don't think you have good data, I always recommend, even if you do, sending a couple of open-ended research emails, asking people, hey, why did you sign up? What's going on in your world that brought you here? Sending people an email that says, hey, why did you cancel? Sending your customers open-ended questions can be a really good way of having them tell you exactly what's happening. I would resist the urge to send customers a survey with radial responses where they pick from 1 out of 4 or 5 or even 8 or 10 options, because that's not going to give you the kind of qualitative data that you're really going to need to build an onboarding sequence. I also recommend jobs to be done interviews, especially if you're in a competitive category and you have people who are switching from one product to your product. There's a lot written on jobs to be done. I won't spend too much time on it, but what the aim and the goal of a jobs to be done research project is to figure out why people are hiring your product. What's the job that they want it to do? And this helps you take a customer-centric approach as opposed to a product-centric approach. So instead of writing emails that say, hey, come check out all of our features, you're able to send emails that say, hey, here's how you solve this very painful problem that you're experiencing. I also recommend looking for outcome-based phrases in your customer support tickets and pre-sales chats or in your interviews. Listen for people telling you the thing that they want to accomplish that has nothing to do with your product. I want to send invoices so that I can look really professional to all of my freelancing clients. Or I want to set up time tracking because I'm really not sure which projects are taking the most amount of time and which ones are ultimately going to generate the most revenue for me. Looking through what we call voice of customer data, all of this feedback that you're getting from folks can help you understand why they're signing up, why they might be canceling, what those missed opportunities are that they're not experiencing. So you'll see this a lot in those cancellation email responses or in your customer support tickets, people telling you what's going on that's stopping them. I use a tool called NomNom to organize a lot of it because there's there's many sources of this data. So when you're talking about the job that your customer hires you to do, this is where the place that I want you to be at mentally, the mindset I want you to have when you're writing your emails. What's going on in their world? What outcome are they looking for? And also, what do they believe about their problem? Do they believe that they ultimately have the ability to solve this problem? Does your customer believe that they will be able to solve this problem on their own? Has this customer been let down by other tools? We're going to see in one of the examples later on a story from one of the founders about how he had been let down. And that's a good way to say, okay, if your customers are being let down, that's a good opportunity to connect with them. So this first chunk of what we've been talking about is the voice of customer data. It's a lot of the reasons for why people cancel in your customers' own words, the reasons why they sign up, the reasons for why they become successful. Now, you're also going to need another kind of information, and that's the how. So why are people here and how are they using your product when they're successful? So to build an onboarding sequence, you need to know what actions make people successful. And this is a very common mental image that many people have when they are starting to think about onboarding sequences, a giant logic tree full of many different options and paths forward, and it's complex and it's branching. And honestly, the image that I'm showing you now is a very small portion of one with very few emails. There could be a lot. It gets really complicated really fast when you start to think about it, and really painful. Even as many times as I've done this, every new project that I have with companies, it takes a really long time for us to figure out exactly what it is that we need to be messaging to our customers. So I want you to start by looking at how people use your product and for the common paths that lead customers to be successful. I've given you a few examples on the screen. So we want to look at one, what do people do when they're first getting started? when you look at your user behavior analytics tool, how you're tracking what people are doing, you want to look and see if, okay, do the people who upgrade at the end of 14 days or 30 days, what do they do during the first 24 or 48 hours? Do people log in and log in every day? Are people who log in once and have an hour-long session more likely to be successful than people who log in once and have a 10-minute session? Are people who log in and every day throughout their trial or for the first 3 or 4 days more likely to be successful? When you learn what makes people successful early on, you're able to use that as a starting point for figuring out what other messages, what steps other people need to do to be successful in their first experience with your product. You're also going to look at what actions lead to an aha moment. So for example, Wistia is a video sharing software, and there are many great stories about the work that the growth team at Wistia has been doing over the last several years, and we're going to include some of those in the resources section. And one of the things that they have found is that there's a few different things people need to do with their video before they really find success with Wistia. So if there's a moment when you know your customers will be successful, for example, if you have a time tracking software or an invoicing software, and you find that the moment when somebody sends an invoice and then gets paid for that invoice is the moment when more people are likely to remain customers. So 80% of all people who send an invoice and get paid for it stay customers. Then how can you get more people to send an invoice and get paid for it? And you'll work backwards to say, what are the actions that we need people to complete during that introductory period? You're also going to want to consider what actions are necessary for a customer to be successful. If somebody cannot use your product successfully until they install it if they download it onto their computer or onto their phone, if they cannot use their product until they do certain things, these are also important steps that you're going to want to incorporate into your onboarding sequence. So now that you have all of this information, how do you turn it into a sequence? How do you take that complicated branching logic tree and turn it into something that is actually useful? So I recommend plotting your email sequence around those actions, those paths to success that you identified when you were looking at your user behavior analysis, what those metrics are telling you about how people use your product. So for example, if there are 3 steps to become successful, we'll want to see 3 tracks of emails to help you reach those success milestones, ideally. I also recommend using behavioral triggers. So making sure that when you're sending emails to people that make sense for where they are in their journey with your product. So this is different from sending a time triggered email where every customer gets the same email on day 1, day 2, day 3. And the reason why behaviorally triggered emails can give your customers a better experience is because, for example, let's say somebody comes to your product and they are very, very eager to learn. They sit down, they've blocked out an afternoon to learn everything they can. And by the end of their first session, they are successful. Now, this person would not need the same follow-up emails that somebody who came in once, logged out, and then never came back would need. So if you're sending the same email that says, hey, you need to make sure you add your company information to somebody who's already sent an invoice, it's not going to deliver a kind of valuable experience for them. And a few of the tools that you can use to find this information to figure out, hey, how do my customers actually use my product? These are some of the ones that can use. I recommend trying them out. Many of them do have trials, so you can see which one works best for you. Now, I want to show you what I mean when I show you an example onboarding sequence based around 3 different actions plus a sales enablement sequence. So we're going to say, for example, that you have a time tracking software, and the customers that are the most successful, that reach an aha moment, that happens when they send an invoice and get paid for it. So the first action could be that they need to start a project. The second action could be that they need to track their time. And the third action could be that they need to create and send an invoice. For example, this is pulled out of thin air. It's completely fiction. You absolutely want to base it off of your own research. Now I'm going to get the pointer. I think it's a little bit easier. So everything in this column, it's called action 1 because all 7 of these emails, each block represents an email. All 7 emails are going to be sent to customers with the goal of helping them start a project. For the second action, all of these emails are going to be about helping a customer track their time. For the third one, all of these emails, each one, they're all going to be a little bit different, but each one is going to be about helping your customer create and send that invoice. And then after they've experienced the joy of getting paid on time, you'll be able to, they've seen the value of your product, and that's when you're going to want to transition into a sales enablement sequence. Now, I know what you're thinking because everyone who sees this chart gets a little bit worried that it's a lot of emails. It's about 30 if you count it all up, and I am not recommending by any stretch that you send 30 emails to your customers. What I recommend is that you set these up with behavioral triggers so that once people have completed an action, they get bumped to a new sequence. So here's are the emails that a customer might receive. Let's say somebody comes to your time tracking tool. You send them one email inviting them to create a project, and you send them another email inviting them to create a project, and they do it. They respond to the email. It's a very clear, straightforward action, and they do it. Then they disappear for a couple days. So you send them another email that says, hey, make sure you start tracking your time. And they ignore your emails for a while, so you have to send them 4. But then after they see this email here, which again is reminding them to track time, they go in, they track their time, and maybe in the same day they create and send an invoice. So you don't need to send them any of these emails because they've already completed the action that these emails were going to invite them to complete. Then you can go right into a sales enablement sequence. And once they upgrade, they upgrade. So you would almost never be sending all of these emails to all of your customers, but it's good to have them on hand. So how do we write emails? So we talked about how do you understand what's happening in your new user experience, what is going on in your customer's head, the forces stopping them from getting started, talking about how they use your product when they're successful. Now we're going to put it all together and look at some conversion copywriting ways of writing these emails. So before you sit down to your computer, you need to know why people are signing up. You need to know what your actions are likely to help people be successful. And you want to know what actions you're going to invite customers to complete. You want to see that sequence fully plotted. You're also going to write these emails from a mindset of knowing that you're helping your customer overcome 2 types of work. There's the hidden work of figuring out how to solve a problem with a product. And then there's that internal work of deciding to continue to solve a problem. I know I frequently will sign up for products and I will be very excited about what they can do. I'll hit one stumbling block and kind of give up and decide, hey, maybe there's another workaround. Maybe the problem isn't as bad as I really thought it was. Maybe there are ways to try this with an existing tool that I have. We want to help people overcome all of that internal conversation that is preventing them from continuing to move forward. And this is an important point. Your customer's biggest problem is very unlikely that they don't know how to use your product. And this is when you will hear copywriters talk about customer-centric messaging all the time. And what we mean by that is that no one is here to try a product. That's not why we wake up in the morning. It's not what keeps us up at night. What keeps us up at night as humans is that we have these things we need to sort through, these problems at work, these problems with our health that we want to solve. The tool, the software is merely the mechanism for solving that problem. So that's why the beginning of your emails, I want you to start when you write them by helping someone overcome those internal hurdles. So if someone has been struggling to get in shape or struggling to be physically fit or struggling to stay on a schedule, having done that research, having reached out to your customers saying, hey, what's going on in your world? Why did you try our product? What's hard for you? Being able to have that data on people saying what's bothering them can allow you to open an email by saying, you know, it's really hard to keep a schedule, for example, when you are managing a job, a family, your life, and training for a marathon. So you're starting by talking about the customer, and then you go into talking about how your products can help them solve whatever problem it is that you're talking about in the email. At the very end, that's when you can invite them to complete a single action. In conversion copywriting, we call this the rule of one. And the rule of one states that for every single piece of copy, you are writing for one reader and you are inviting them to complete one action. And this is, there are occasions where you may want to ask them to complete the same category of options, but there may be two different choices for them. But really what we want to do is to eliminate that decision fatigue and choice overload that can come from sending people an email with a laundry list of things to do, or asking them to go watch a 5, 10, 20-minute guide to your product. A high-level overview like that is the first interaction they have is not necessarily going to help them reach their goals. And to give you a little bit of anecdotal evidence, when I gave a version of this talk at MicroConf in Las Vegas in the springtime, I asked the audience how many people watch the videos that are sent as part of product welcome emails, and none of the hands went up, even though a lot of the folks there also do send product welcome emails with long videos or overwhelming tutorials. So we call this, we have a special vocabulary, we call this message matching. You want to match the message that your customer is using when they talk about their problem. We also call it joining the conversation happening in their head. This second section is the instructions, and then this is the call to action. Call to action is a pretty common term. If you haven't heard it before, it's a good one to know. So we're going to do I'm going to show you a few approaches to avoid. These are some of the ways that can make it harder for your customers to get started. The poison mushrooms and the scary clowns, if you will. And then we're going to go into the teardown section. So I call this approach the vacation photos approach. I'm sure we have a variety of age groups on today, but I call it the vacation photos approach based on something I have not experienced personally, but I've heard a lot about. Before Facebook, people would go on vacation and then take a lot of pictures and invite their friends over to watch a slideshow of their photos. And you can't have any of the deviled eggs or the Jell-O mold until the vacation photo slideshow is complete. And this is kind of like holding everybody hostage until they're able to get what they want out of your product. And this is something that I see very frequently. This is a chat that I had with someone. I'm in the market for a text analysis tool. And what I wanted to see were these bite-sized videos, written documentation. I didn't get any kind of guidance on how I should get started. And I asked for help, and none of the emails that I got made it easy for me to be successful. So it's kind of like being forced to watch this video here. I think it was about 20 minutes long. I was also offered a 45-minute video. These are not good ways of evaluating a tool. A trial is still an evaluation period, and sitting down to watch a 45-minute video is a very big ask. This approach is one of the most common approaches. I call it the too much too soon approach, a little overeager. And this is what a lot of people will do when they are not sure how many emails they should send. A lot of people, there's a big prejudice against overwhelming people with too many emails. Understandably, if your emails aren't helpful, then you don't want to send too many of them. But this email, just by condensing all of the steps that you need to do to get started with this product, is also pretty overwhelming. We've got 4 different things that we need to do, including this 4th one, already sold, ready to sign up. This is an email that also has tips for getting started. It is very unlikely that someone who is still in the getting starting phase is going to be already sold and ready to sign up. Each one of these blued out bars are also different links. So there are many, many ways for me to move forward. Yes, it is numbered that I know I have to go invite my staff, but there are a lot of options here for what I can do. What I would recommend for an email like this is to, instead of writing it about everything, just make it about inviting the staff. And then there's this email, the opposite approach. Somebody heard that you should not write long emails and decided to go with an email that's as short as possible. And this is called the Clueless help approach. This is when, I also like to call it the Clueless intern approach. So it's like when you have, if you've ever worked with interns, they're new, they're eager, but they're not really sure yet that the best way to help to be successful in their internship is to help their boss and to think about specific ways that their boss can say yes or no. Instead, this kind of email just says, hey, I'm here, how can I be helpful? And it puts the onus entirely on the reader to figure out what kind of help they could possibly need. And your customers are overwhelmed by all of these emails. So many product welcome emails and onboarding emails have just really overwhelming information. They force people to watch a quick start guide. They have all of these different steps you need to do. They send you a help center, video tutorials, a blog. They ask you to read documentation. This is very overwhelming for a new user who's here to see if they can be successful with your product. These people are, when you're sending emails to people, these are people who are under no obligation to ever come back to your product. It's not, none of us are making the Hotel California of apps. It's not the firm of products. People are free to leave anytime they want and free to not come back. And if you want them to come back and be successful, I highly recommend that you make it very easy for them to overcome the conversations happening in their head and to figure out exactly the first step they need to do to get started. All right, now it is time for Teardown. So Olivia, I'm going to see if I can effectively get this. I think I have to exit and start my video. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay.
So you want to exit? Yeah. Head into Zoom.
And then present
there you
again,
are.
right?
I see ya.
Okay,
hey
good.
Guys, we're back.
Hey, we're back. We thought it would be nicer if you could see our faces while we are tearing down all of the emails. And I have to say, I don't like that when you talk about what's going on in copy, that the industry term is tear down, because no one wants to tear anybody down. I wish they were called build-ups.
Oh, I like that. We should start that. I like that a lot.
Yeah. We'll see if we can make it a thing. Okay. So we have 3 emails from 3 volunteers. We actually had an overwhelming number of submissions, and we are so grateful for everyone who submitted and for the volunteers whose emails we are going to be looking at today. It is so great to have real live emails to look at. So we are going to start with the first one with a company called Avail. So I mentioned a few times that one of the customers that we're going to be looking at helps with fitness, and this is the first email that you receive when you sign up for Avail. So to start off by talking about some of the things that I think are working really well for this email, this is a letter from the CEO email, which is a very popular way of, it's one of the more common things that I find that people already know about when I start to begin an engagement with them. And what I really like about this one is that it's not a throwaway, hey, I'm a CEO, welcome to my product, let me know if you need help email. He really talks about his story and going through a 10-year process of competing on a national swim team. That's really cool. But there was bad information. There were some things that just made it impossible for him to reach this goal. The other thing that I like about this email is that we've got these links down here. These 2 links suggest to me that this is a mobile app, and the first thing you need to do, the required first step, is to download a mobile app if that's what you have. But the thing is, there are a couple things I would also do to improve this email. So first, if this is a mobile app and this is what you have to do, we do see that there's a little bit of copy here, download on, get it on. That's a call to action. I'd like to see make it a little bit more clear that that's what you're supposed to do and that this is definitely a mobile app. The other thing that I see, we've got some social media icons down here. We're talking about featuring stories down here. For a first email, I would say this is cool that you want to feature customer stories. That's very cool. I'm not sure that I would necessarily bring this up right at the very beginning. Maybe not, but it feels like you want to not overwhelm people with too many different paths forward, again, because we want them to download the app. And I don't recommend putting these social media links and getting people to follow you. It's kind of a distraction. It's more of a sub goal. It's not the main thing that anybody is here for. And then the last thing, I would love to see this broken up a little bit. It looks to me, there are so many debates on how line breaks should work. But for me, I like to see it a little bit broken up, 3 to 4 line paragraphs, maybe even 5, but it feels like a big chunk of text. So I would consider breaking it up a little bit. Yeah, so those are some of my first impressions for what I might do with this email. Olivia, what do you think? What do you want to add?
Yeah, those are awesome. That's great feedback. I agree with, I would say, most of that. I really love the subject line a little bit, like join the health revolution. Like, people like to be part of something. So I think that's like a strong way of getting people kind of on board. I also love the personal story. Totally agree with that. I think the action of getting people to kind of share theirs in the beginning, to your point, might be a little early. Sometimes they might not be bought into what your goals are, what you're trying to do as a company or your mission. So kind of building up that trust and building that connection could potentially take time. So maybe it depends on kind of the results you're seeing. If people are taking this action from the first email, awesome. But if you're not seeing it from that first email, try putting it later in the flow once they've already kind of established that connection with you guys. But yeah, overall, I do like the story idea. I'm wondering, like, if you test out adding like a personal image from, like, you swimming, whether that kind of connects people to your story a little bit, the face behind the brand. So
that's a really great idea. Oh, I love that. Especially with something like fitness. Like, this is not a B2B software that we're talking about here. You're doing something with your real human body. That'd be cool.
Yeah.
I like it. All right, great. So we have another email from Avail. So this is the email that you get after, I guess, a day, either later that day or the next day. So it's still it's the second message that you get from Avail. And there's a couple things in here that confuse me a little bit. So I am not entirely sure, based on what I saw in the first email compared to this email, is whether this is a mobile app. So in the first one, we were talking about downloading, but in this one, we're talking about going to fill out a questionnaire, stay up to date. And when I click on that link, I have pulled a screenshot for what I see when I click on it. I see a desktop dashboard. It's still asking for my personal information. You can't see it because this is a static screenshot, but the begin daily log is kind of blinking to call attention to it. So when I look at it, I'm not 100% sure what I'm supposed to do here. One of the things that I loved about the last email was how the founder connected with the team to say, or with the reader to say, hey, this is like, I've been doing this is something I struggled with for 10 years. There's a lot of bad information. I'm going to help you with that. But then when I see this email, I'm not sure how. I'm ready and I'm on board. I want to know how I can overcome whatever these problems are. I'm not sure what they are. And I'm not sure what this questionnaire can do to be helpful. I'm not sure what it means to join a blog. Is this visit a blog, join a blog? Is this the main value add? Is it helpful information? And then again, here we've got these social media links, which I wouldn't recommend putting here because, well, I'm not sure if they're follow or share links, but I'm not sure what they need.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of standard templates you see online that people
Yes.
take have those social media icons, and it's almost feels like the norm that people just think they have to have them at the footer, but you don't. And a
You
lot of
don't.
times that just, yeah, you don't. And it takes away attention from the main call to action you really want them to take. So
Yes.
if, having them follow you on social is very important, that should be its own message.
Absolutely. I agree.
But yeah, I agree. I think just having a little bit of context as to what kind of health insights am I going to get from this? Like, why do I want to finish this questionnaire? Like, what kind of insight would I get from doing it? That helps motivate me to actually go and take the next step. But I like that they have that main driver that they're trying to get people to take. I think that's really important. So, and then your point as to like when they actually get to the product, you're not really sure kind of what you're doing there. That's a great opportunity to explain and remind. A lot of times people don't always read through everything in the email. Sometimes they're trigger happy. For those people that are, it's good to just remind them, like, this is what you're here to do. Shameless plug, Chameleon can help with that. But yeah, like you can build like a nice welcome message that reiterates the value prop of what you're trying to drive them.
Yeah.
And the goal of
And that's, so when we're talking about message matching being what's happening up top. So when you're sending somebody an email and in the very beginning, you're joining the conversation happening in their head. So they're coming to you, they're saying, or you're joining their conversation saying it's really hard to, I don't know, keep a schedule when you are balancing your life and work, and maybe you have kids, maybe you have pets, maybe you're traveling a lot for work, who knows? And then we're going to help you make sure that you can track your progress. The first step to do that is with a questionnaire. When you go into the app, so when you click that link, it is a good first step that this begin daily log is blinking, but it would be great using a tool like Chameleon to have some kind of reminder here that speaks back to the message we just saw. So that's another way to think about message matching, is that when you click through, you want to see the same message. The way that this term is very frequently used is if you're on a landing page and the landing page says, get 50% off shoes, and you click on the ad and then you go to a page, there better be something there about getting 50% off shoes. And if there isn't, then does that promotion even exist? So we want to pull that thread through from the email that you get all the way through into the product.
Love it.
And then after a few days later, I got this email again. So there is no harm in sending the same email more than once if people ignore it. I usually recommend changing the subject line. But because this email does have some questions about what we should be doing here, I would recommend changing it. I would also recommend having a few different emails, since it sounds like people take a pretty deep personal journey. Okay, now this is one from a business called TradeifI. The first thing that I notice when I see this email is that it starts off with a kind of structure to help people kind of ground them in the world that they're in when they get this email, by talking about, okay, you're here, this is TradeifI, welcome. That said, I want to point out that this copy here, thanks for giving us a go. We built it from the ground up for people like you, and look forward to you discovering the awesome benefits that thousands of users rely on every day. This paragraph, if you remove the word TradeifI, I think most products in most categories around the world would say is probably true of them. And in conversion copywriting, we like to say, Joanna Wiebe said this in her Business of Software talk last year, really good copy singles out your reader like the loudspeaker singling out a man in the crowd at a train station. You want this to be written exactly for your target reader and talk exactly about the problems that they are experiencing, rather than the general idea of benefits. The other thing that I notice here is that we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 links plus social media, which is a lot. I do see some steps here, so I would consider reworking this email around this first step. If this isn't the first thing that people need to do to get started, I wonder if it would be worth testing an email that is all about getting people to complete this one step. Maybe you offer these as in your footer and say, hey, if you need more support, you can get one-on-one support, but you want to make it clear what people are supposed to do. Because even though you're pointing out that this is one, there's so much going on in this email that it makes it a little bit difficult to figure out what to do. What do you think, Olivia?
Totally. It's actually funny. We used to have an onboarding email, the first welcome email with
Really?
three different call to actions, very similar to this. And recently we tested, we actually literally had like a getting started checklist, a demo, and help docs. And we tested just driving them to the first action in our product. It's to build an onboarding tour, that first tour. And we saw a 30% increase in the amount of people that actually took that action, not even click through rate. I'm talking like actually did that in the product. So that made a huge difference for us. And that's what these onboarding emails are about, right? It's not about like, I mean, no, having them know where to get help is important, but the email is to get them back in the product, using it, getting excited about and selling that value. So the demos and the help docs, those are things you can embed into your product and make it easy for them to find it once they're in there. They don't necessarily need to be shown that in the email. So that's one recommendation I would recommend, is to try that out, because it has worked for us. Not to say it works for everyone, but yeah, definitely try that out.
That's awesome. That's really cool. I would, that would make a really cool case study should you decide to write about it. If you haven't already, I'd love to read that. It's cool. All right. So the next one, so our last company that we're going to look at are a few emails from Doki. And so they look a little bit different because Doki so the first few emails that we looked at were triggered based on me going to the site, signing up for a free trial. Doki is a paid sign up. So I asked Ben and Marie to send me some of their emails for us to take a look at. Now, the first thing that I see when I look at this email is this great set of bullets. Now, everyone's eye is going to go someplace a little different. But what I love so much about this email is that I know immediately what we're about here. We're talking about courses. We're talking about, we can drip courses. We've got resource libraries. You can update on the fly. That to me sounds interesting because I suspect maintaining a resource library could be very difficult. We've got onboarding documentation, group programs, masterminds, content, and more. So there's a lot here. I know immediately if I signed up for this late on a Friday and I don't get to it until Monday that, this is the course software that I wanted to sign up for. The other thing here is that we see a good message matching. It's really tough to create content when you are working on online programs. We know that. So we're going to give you some time to see if it fits what you're working on. I also like that they say, hey, we're going to send you some more emails. This is great. I know that if I continue using this tool, if I don't cancel my trial, I'm going to get more help. Now, a paid sign up, even with a free trial, is a little bit different than a non-paid trial. Not a paid trial, but a non-credit card opt-in. You know what I mean. It's a little bit different because there's more skin in the game when these folks have given you their credit card information. They know if they don't actually use it, they're going to have to go in and cancel if they are not going to continue using it. So there's a little bit extra incentive there to keep using and keep moving forward. There's also more incentive there's always a lot of incentive to help people be successful. So there's an offer of help here, which is very good. The one thing that I kind of wonder, so I know I've met Ben and Marie, so I know them and I know they're really very helpful people. And I almost wonder if taking this email even one, that's not to say I don't know the founders of the other emails. I haven't met them yet, but I know Ben and Marie. If you take this one step further and say, hey, why did you sign up? What's going on in your world? This can be a good opportunity to take that really good rapport building email one step further and give somebody a chance to respond and ask you questions or talk to you. this can depend on the size of your business. If you have 1 to 2 to 3,000 customers signing up every month, then that can need a team of people to be ready to respond to those emails. But that's something that can be your main call to action, is you can ask people to respond to your email. And I know Groove HQ has written a lot about having their founder email be, hey, what's going on in your world? And they get really good responses. So I recommend that. Olivia.
I dig that. Yeah, I think if you ask a question, you definitely want to follow up with them. Like don't have, don't leave it to your customer support people to follow up with them. If it's from the founder, you want the founder to respond and build that connection, to have it really feel personalized, etc. I really like this email. I love that they hit on a pain point at the top. Like, are you struggling with creating online programs because you have to create awesome content for it in order to work? And as a marketer, I'm like, yes, like all the time. So I think that's great. One thing that I would maybe kind of, there's a little, I'm not against long emails, but there's some optimizations of wording that could be like shrunk down a little bit more here. Like Doki is a business focused platform. I don't know if business focus is important. I think sometimes that's maybe obvious. Doesn't really tell me anything new about Doki. Or I think there's, in the beginning, you talk about the challenge. I want to know how you solve it before you tell me whether Doki is a good fit. So like, how do you guys solve that problem in that sentence? I think those are the two things that I thought that I craved as I was reading this. But lots of great use cases, that's for sure. I think,
cool.
Good email.
So the next email in their sequence is what we call botched sign up email. Well, what I call a botched sign up email. And this is an email that you should send to folks who don't complete their sign up. So if you notice that you have a lot of,
called that before.
Say again?
Never heard it called that before.
Yeah, I've never, I try to give each type of email a name, like a feature update email or a research email or an instructional email, to make it clear when you sit down to write it what the goal is. I don't know if other people use botched sign up, but I like it. And so when people sign up for your tool, they may not complete the sign up process for a number of reasons. And one of the things that is so good about this email is that you can click here to send yourself another confirmation email. This is very helpful because sometimes I've seen emails where you need to refer back to another email in your inbox. And anytime you are sending people out of the window that they're in to go do something and into their inbox or onto social media, you risk not having them actually do the thing that you want to do because they get distracted, because they see that their cousin is having a baby, or their boss has asked them to dial in immediately, code red. So this call to action right there, click here, can trigger a confirmation email, and I can go right back to it. And you can also get help if you need it, which is good. Olivia, it's a short one.
Yeah, I don't have much to add on this one.
Okay. And then our last one. So this is the last one that we're going to review. And so most of the emails that we've seen so far are emails that get triggered right away. So the welcome emails and 1 or 2 emails afterwards. And this is one of the first really good examples of getting people to create or complete a specific action. So if you are in Doki and you are seeing if you can create a course, then you have to put some content in there if you're going to be successful. So what I like about this is that, so I saw that I'm going to assume that this click here would typically be hyperlinked if it was going to be in an email. And then there are some additional articles here. So to Olivia's earlier point about not wanting to overwhelm people with a demo and with too much documentation, one exception to that rule is if you are sending the specific documentation to go with the thing you're asking them to do. So if you need to create a new course, you can say, here are some links that might help you create the new course, as a kind of a sub call to action. Not always, and it's definitely worth testing and you're going to want to make sure that you can help the people once they're in the product get the tools or the instructions that they need. The other thing that I noticed about this email is that when we're talking about creating a first course, the thing that I wonder is if this means A, stop, think, plan, build out, film your first course, like design the first curriculum and everything from start to finish? Or does it mean take the things that you've been working on and add them to create these modules and lessons and all of the information? So I think the thing that I would love to see would be a little bit, so I know, Olivia, it sounds like you may not be a fan of long emails. I dig long emails that have like an abundance of all the instructions and information in a single location, because sometimes it's really tricky to bounce around and try to find it. So I wonder if this is something to test, having a longer description of what it means when you're talking about what the text is, the image, the audio, the combination, and what kinds of things you might need. Like, is this something that I can do right now? Or is this something that I have like if you do a craft tutorial, you have your things you need to get started, your pipe cleaners, your googly eyes, your glue stick. I wonder if this is something that you need to have already done some things before you can get started, or if you can just launch right into it. So yeah, what do you think?
Yeah. I mean, I'm not against long emails. I think there's a time, there's always a goal, right? It depends what your goal is. I think there's, for this specific email, some of the additional articles and videos that can be helpful. One of the things that we always preach is like, once you get them in the product, you can have those additional elements or those additional help articles as part of the training. So once they are there and ready, like the email is there to like motivate it to do that and get them pumped up and sell the value. Once they're in the product, if they need help, you can provide it right there. So that's what we preach, but if it works, it works. So, it's one of those things, test it without, if you remove the help articles and you're seeing more people create a course, that's a good thing, right?
Yeah.
That's kind of the one recommendation I would have, but I'm not against it. So, I'm all about iterating, testing. What works for one company does not always work for other companies.
Yeah.
So, especially ones that are more complex in nature, like some enterprises and a big enterprise business where they have like very complex systems, people are kind of used to reading and, getting more of like the documentation up front. So yeah.
This is something that the Nom Nom, which is the customer research tool that I use, it's a very this is kind of this is the segue into what to think about next after you've really nail your initial onboarding experience. How do you help people continue? So a tool like Nom Nom is a repository for thousands, potentially millions of data points. So you have your initial experience of how you get started. And then I find that I was able to do that with the information that I had. And the more that I got into it, the more deeper questions I had, the more I started going out of my way to say, I actually would love to read, like, is there a book on this topic? Because there's so much more to it. So, there's a lot of different ways to do it, but the most important thing is to make sure your customers are getting the help that they need to be successful. There's more than one way to do that. So cool. All right. So I think that's the end of
we're actually running out of time, but I know we're almost at 3 Eastern.
Oh, mackerel. Okay.
I know, time just flew by. I just checked the clock and we're sorry guys. So if you could stay on for those that, I know there's a few great questions that I want to get to, and if you have to hop off, don't worry. We are recording this so you can hear some of the answers to some of these questions, but we will take some. You ready, Allie?
I'm ready. Let's do it.
Firing at you here. No, so we have a great one from Michelle. She asked, we didn't specifically cover this, but kind of what are some different ways of approaching barriers to onboarding when members are under the GDPR? It's a great question.
Okay, so I am not a compliance expert. I am not an attorney. And I would say that to be absolutely certain about how you are managing that I would consult someone who definitely will say that they are an expert in those things. However, that said, a lot of the same rules that you would have for example, GDPR with a newsletter, you're sending people emails. So there's a lot of the same things that would apply with respect to consent, letting people know how you're going to use them, making sure that they can opt out of their emails. That's kind of a non-answer, but it's.
Yeah, I would add to that too. Obviously not a legal expert, but one of the things that we've seen, and we actually had some of our customers do, is there's different, you want to ask people to opt in, obviously, before you send them emails or marketing based emails. But there's different ways you could do that. You could do that in product by having various different messages. So find places and opportunity to ask them to opt in, usually when they've done something successful.
Yes.
Hey, do you want to, opt in to receive more information about how to be better at X, Y, and Z? And so you definitely don't just give up in the beginning on the form when they're signing up, like find other opportunities to get them to opt in throughout. And yeah, that's kind of my feedback there.
Yeah.
The next question, thanks Michelle for that. The next question was from Ben, also a really great one. Is there an advantage to branded emails versus plain text in onboarding?
Oh my gosh. Okay. I have this debate literally every time I send an email with whoever I'm working with. The official data that I have seen, I will have to go track it down because it has been a while. It is that plain text emails tend to perform better. So if you want people to do the thing more than you want them to, have this great visual experience, then I would recommend plain text emails. That said, if you have a brand that has a very strong consumer focus and your customers are already used to seeing a certain kind of email from you, going from a very designed email straight to a plain text email can be a little bit jarring. So this is one of those things that I read a study a long time ago that said plain text performs better. I said, check, not going to think about that again because that's all I need. And that's what I go with. I always recommend plain text. Plain text also gives you a better starting point of what you're going to be testing because there's only copy in it. There's not extra images. There's not all this hoopla around it.
Yeah. One thing I wonder is plain text is very sexy right now, and a lot of companies are doing it. So does it get lost in the shuffle, or will it more? So that's something I always think about, and I tend to prefer to mix it up and kind of see which one is more engaging. There are things like that might work better sometimes when you have a new product announcement and you want to make more of a splash and draw someone's attention and have something different. That helps having more of a images embedded in it, show off the product a little bit more. So, I'm not a believer that one always works better than the other, but in certain circumstances there may. So
you can test it. It's probably the easiest thing to test. So
yeah, if it's from a person, if it's from you, plain text is the way to go.
Yes, for sure.
I was trying to read other questions and then I just got really distracted by answering this one. Lots of guys, so many good questions.
I know I'm good to stay as long as you guys are to answer all of them. If anyone wants to email me their questions, if we didn't get to them, then send them.
Yeah. Another great one from Ben. Are celebration emails useful at all? We've been considering sending emails when customers reach certain milestones, like made their first sale.
Yes, definitely. So, okay, we talked a lot about the initial experience, but as you start to move past that first, like they did the main thing, they set it up correctly, or they got something successful, then you're starting to move into how do we remind them of their success, continue to show the value, retain them, and reminding them of their sales are great. My invoice software, Harvest, sends me an email whenever an invoice gets paid, and I love it. it's great. It's like my favorite email to get. So definitely.
Cool. Another one that we have from JP. And what book is there? Hold on, is there? Did you mention a specific book, Allie? I may have missed it, around the influence of using Nom Nom.
Oh, so Sophia Quintero, the founder of Nom Nom, has been really helping me learn a lot about how to organize research and create taxonomies. And I will have to go and check. I'm pretty sure she sent me some really helpful resources, but we'll see if we can add them to the follow-up email. I don't know them off the top of my head because I just learned about them, but yes, I will add them to the list.
Cool. And there's a really good one from Ashley as well. All of these are good. How do in-system notifications tie to support onboarding communication strategies? Once someone has signed up, is it best to continue emailing or moving communications in app, or a combo? I'd love to hear your perspective on it, Allie.
I say combo, for the main reason that, so in-app is very important. When someone's in your product, you need to help them, but people will leave your app and you want them to come back. So I don't think that there are like 1,000 acquisitions channels, and you can go through and you can say, we do a lot of Facebook, we do a lot of Twitter, but we don't do any Instagram, for example. But for onboarding with your customers, I would not say that a single channel approach would be good. I would say you should do your best to be communicating in app and through email to make sure that they come back. What do you think? Do you agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely. Onboarding is a cross-channel effort, right? You have to hit them from various angles to make sure they get to the next step. Obviously, if they're in product, taking the actions you want them, you don't want to email them to take those actions because they're in the process of, they've already done those. But yeah, getting them back into the product, being top of mind, email really helps with that. And once they're in product, it's helping them get to the next step. So they just accomplish that first aha moment. What's the next big feature? What's the next big thing that they need to do to really become an expert, really see the value of your product? So yeah, totally. You nailed that.
Good.
From my perspective.
Yeah.
Another question from JP. What do you do when you already have a web? This is, I think, similar. When you already have a web onboarding, for instance, like create a first team within like a B2B, that would be it sounds like the first call to action, create a first team. Should you still send a welcome email with a call to action that says create first team? Then it's like double messaging, or should you just skip web onboarding in favor of email onboarding for the first few weeks in the SaaS product? So this kind of ties well with.
Is that, okay, so
it's more, so the question is, how do you not message the same first action that you're trying to drive to, both in the app and in email, or how do you coordinate that so it feels like more of a flow?
This is where having your behaviorally triggered tools all talking to each other is very important. So if you're sending emails from Send With Us, and you're showing messages to people in app, and you're tracking whether they complete those actions. If they, for example, create the team, if they don't need to create a team anymore, then don't send them any more messaging about creating a team. Whatever the next step is, you can move all of your channel communication to whatever that next step is.
Yeah, exactly. I agree. So you definitely want to have your product data, usage data in your email platform.
Yes.
If you don't, you're not able to really see if your emails are effective to begin with, because you're not seeing if people are taking that action as easily. But you're also then not sending the most relevant information to those folks. So yeah, you want to make sure all of your emails and in product are triggered based. That way they will not trigger if someone already has taken that action. So you don't want to do one or the other. You want to do both and have them be both trigger based. So then they show up when the person needs it or when they're on that specific channel. So
definitely.
I hope that answered your question. I'm trying to see if there's any other ones. If you guys have any other ones, I think we can take one more. That might be it.
I have 2 in the Q&A. Do you have the Q&A or the chat open? Okay. So for Trevor asks if these strategies can work in the African market, and I don't see why not. Yeah, I think there's a very common misperception. A lot of people will frequently think that, oh, what we're talking about is something that works in an American market only because Americans are a certain way. And while it's absolutely true that there are different cultural differences in how you're going to talk to customers in different markets, people everywhere want to be helped to complete the thing that is necessary for them to solve their problem. So I would say I don't see why not. I can't think of any reason why this wouldn't work in other cultures unless I can't think of one. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, the only thing, it's like understanding what your users are using, what kind of technology.
True.
Are they on mobile? Are they on desktop? Are there other things to consider about them? And I think making sure that your emails are designed for that.
That's a really good point. There is I don't remember the company, but Val Geisler, who is another email onboarding expert, was on one of Jane Portman's UI Breakfast podcasts. And she mentioned, my uncle's cousin's brother's sister's niece, mentioned an email that goes out to many New Yorkers who are on the subway. So they get their email, it loads up before they leave their house, and they read it on their phone. So if all of the content is not in the email, they're not going to read it because they're underground. So that's a very good point. If your customers are completely mobile, then you're going to want to make sure you're really optimizing for that mobile experience, which can mean a lot of different things.
Totally. So I think we're kind of running out of time now. We still have 2 more things to mention, but I am seeing so many more good questions coming in. We can definitely take those online. I want to make sure that we answer all of those. So we can definitely follow up with you guys afterwards. But if you, let me share kind of the last 2 things. I want to share kind of some resources for you guys. And we're going to wrap this up because I feel like we've stolen so much of your time. I'm so sorry. So let me just share my screen real quick. Boom. Awesome. So to wrap this up, we have actually as a team, Send With Us, Allie and myself put together a list of some great email resources for you guys around user onboarding. So Allie, do you want to kind of talk about the first one? I know that was one of your suggestions, or the first 2.
So the very best example I shouldn't say the very best, but one of the best examples for learning about onboarding out in the wild is what Joanna Wiebe from Copy Hackers has written about, and what Andrew Kaplan, who's the head of growth at Wistia, has done. He's written in a lot of places. I interviewed him for Mixpanel, and his team took a really long 2-year approach with multiple people, which isn't possible for tiny businesses, I know, but they took a really deep approach to figuring out what kinds of customers were successful, how they could attract more. And Joanna Wiebe, who is the original conversion copywriter, optimized a lot of their emails and wrote about the results. So those are very good places for learning more. I also have a free 4-part course that you can take. You can sign up on my website. It comes out by email, and then I continue emailing you more helpful things about onboarding, or you can unsubscribe. It's up to you. The last 2, do you want to talk about them, Olivia?
Yeah. So we also actually wrote a blog post recently around kind of how to craft really great user onboarding emails. We did a teardown in that on a few other emails, so definitely check them out. We have some good tips on how to think about user onboarding a lot of the practices or a lot of the recommendations and how to think about it are very similar to how Ali presented them today. So definitely check that out. And Send With Us also has a really great blog post around strategies and how to create welcome emails. And I know that was a question that came up a few times today, is how do you really create one that drives people to action, get them in the product and taking the next step. So definitely check those out. And we'll also send you these links in the follow-up email so you guys have them. And of course, this webinar was brought to you by Chameleon. This is like such a shameless plug. Chameleon and Send With Us. So we're Chameleon. We help you build personalized user onboarding experience inside your product. So once you get a user from your emails to your product, help them take the next step. And you can do this without engineering, so no dev resources. If you want to learn more, go to trychameleon.com and Send With Us. Our gracious hosts. So they are an email production platform. They really allow you to build great trigger-based email experiences. So to learn more about them, check out sendwithus.com. And guys, that's it. I wish we could like keep going. This was so fun. Ali, thank you so much for jumping on today. I had a blast. I hope you guys all had a blast. And look out for a, oh, I think I lost you for a second. Oh, you're on mute. Still on mute. Are you, oh, there you go. I unmuted you.
Okay. I don't know what happened. I'm really sorry.
All I said was, thank you so much for hopping on. This was so lovely to have you. I learned a ton. I hope everyone else did. But I was just letting everyone know, check out your, the follow-up email. We'll send you all the resources in this webinar recording, so you guys kind of review the teardowns and some of the great best practices that Ali shared with you. And I hope everyone has an awesome day.
Thanks for joining, everyone. Hope you learned something.
Bye, guys.
All right. Bye.